Hey, Teddy K here for the Best Buy blog, and in this video review we take a look at the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 and Note 10 Plus, the latest flagships from Samsung that feature bigger screens and new features for the S Pen. At this point, Samsung has iterated pretty heavily between the Galaxy Note line and the Galaxy S line. So the Galaxy S10 Plus and S10 have a lot of similarities to the Note 10 and Note 10 Plus. Now, this is the first time that Samsung has actually split the Note into two phones. It's usually always a solo act, but not this time. Now there's a larger size with a 6.8-inch display, and then the smaller one with a 6.3-inch display, which, by the way, is the same size as the Galaxy S10 Plus. Only in this case, the phones seem a little smaller than their sizes would indicate. Now, don't get me wrong. Now, the Note 10 Plus is big. It's not a small phone, but because there's barely any bezels around these devices, they're not what you would typically think a 6.8-inch or 6.3-inch device would be. So the Note 10 in that regard surprised me a little bit because I found it was much easier to use one-handed than I thought it would be. It is smaller actually than the Note 9, which even though the Note 9 has a slightly larger display, it's 6.4-inch in that device. Whereas the Note 10 Plus is a little harder to use one-handed, but if you have bigger hands, I think you'll find that this is maybe a good size for you. Either way, the phones offer a lot of features, but most of them are familiar, especially from the S10 line. So what the differentiator is here is the pen. The S Pen is really the main thing that separates the S and the Note lines. For those of you who may know, you may recall that in the Note 9, Samsung actually added a little bit more to the pen. So rather than just writing, you could actually use the button to control certain functions. So for example, you could take a photo, take a video, or play and pause music. Now you can do more with the Note 10. You can actually navigate the camera app. So for example, I could switch lenses, or I could zoom in or out. I could snap a photo. There's a lot more that you can do now. And you can also use the pen to also navigate YouTube when it comes to playing and pausing or playing the next video. Now, it's interesting. When Samsung demoed this, it looked really cool. Now, in practice, as I've tried it, it's not bad. It's just that it takes a little bit of a learning curve to understand the cadence and the nuance and how to do these things. I mean, zooming in, there were times when it seemed really easy, and then there were times when it didn't seem easy at all. I found an easier time sort of flipping the change from the front to the rear lens, or even like switching a mode if I wanted to shoot in live focus or pro or something like that. Now, switching modes, you can only switch to that mode. You can't actually change anything in that mode. So if you wanted to, for example, with Pro, if you wanted to change the aperture or the shutter speed or something like that, you can't do that with the pen. Carrying on here with the pen just for a moment, because Samsung did point out also that it is easier to convert text that you've written. Well, you convert handwriting into text actually, and it does work. The main integration with that is with Microsoft Word, which is very cool, of course, because a lot of people use that program. It just doesn't work with other programs right now. So if you're a Google Docs user or you use some other word processing program, you're not going to be able to get your handwriting onto that easily. You can convert it into text on the phone, but then you got to go through the process of basically emailing it or just getting it over to your computer or wherever to copy and paste it into a document. Whereas with Word, you don't have to do that. It can just literally go from one place to the other. Now, the pen otherwise writes the same. I don't know that there's any real difference in terms of how accurate it is or how much more it's going to feel like pen to paper. To me, writing on this felt the same as it did on the Note 9. Perhaps it might be different for other users, but for me it felt pretty much the same. So if you're looking for a big jump as far as the writing side of this goes, I don't think you're going to find that in the Note 10. I did mention the camera earlier, and so the camera is also somewhat surprising simply because it just doesn't do as much as I would have expected. For example, the S10 Plus camera is the same here. Samsung literally took that camera and plopped it into this. So the image sensor, the lenses, all that stuff is the same. Nothing is different as far as the specs go. Even the shooting performance is going to be the same. There's a slight change. There's a little bit better dynamic range. So the photos are not going to be exactly the same in terms of output,
but I would have expected a little bit of a bigger jump, especially in night photography or low light photography. The night mode that Samsung introduced soon after they launched the S10 is essentially the same one here. So if you're looking for something that, if you're looking for a big jump or a big leap forward or something totally different in the way that you're going to shoot photos, not necessarily the case here, unless of course you get into the depth sensor lens that is in the Note 10 Plus, which allows you to get a little bit more depth of field. You can use the AR features like AR Doodle, which I think is an acquired taste, and also to shoot video where you can get more blur. You can get like a blurred background in the way that Samsung has done with still photos with their live focus mode. It's interesting. It's a new kind of way of shooting video. It's interesting, but I found it weird that at times, like, because it needs faces to focus on in order for it to really get into gear, if you're trying to shoot an object, so if I tried to do it with a car and it didn't work very well at all. It wasn't kicking in the way I wanted it to. But once someone stepped into the frame, then that person became in focus. And the thing that I can't fully understand is the way that distance works. So if I had someone standing behind me and they weren't that far behind, but they're still behind me, they would probably be in focus too. The further back they are, the more that they're out of focus. So it's a mode that still needs some work, but it is an interesting way of shooting video if you're looking at, if you're just looking at doing something a little bit more interesting and dynamic. It wasn't my cup of tea the way it is right now, but with some improvements, maybe I could get creative with it. I'm going to make a couple quick points about performance and battery life. Performance, in my mind, is not really that different from the S10 and S10 Plus. Yes, there's more RAM, which is always good for multitasking, but in terms of anything else, gaming, photo editing, the basic things that you're going to do on a phone, like social media, messaging, browsing, things like that, all of that is pretty much going to be more or less the same. I didn't see a dramatic difference in performance. It's using the same processor, the same Snapdragon processor that the S10 and S10 Plus were using. So the RAM will help on the multitasking side, but in terms of speed and performance, more or less the same. Battery life takes a bit of a hit more so on the Note 10 Plus because of the screen resolution and simply the screen size. The Note 10, on the other hand, I found was a little bit better when it came to battery life, but neither one is exceptional by any means when it comes to that. You'll be able to go through a full day, but don't be surprised if you have to plug in and charge at night, or at least lay it down on a wireless charger, because of course wireless charging does work on both of these. So you have that option as well, and reverse wireless charging in case you want to charge other devices from it too. And that's my review of the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 and Note 10 Plus for the Best Buy blog. I'm Teddy K. Thanks for watching.